Hello and welcome to Magic Rays of Light, a podcast exploring the world of Apple TV and so much more. My name's Sigmund Judge, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Devon Dundee. We've got a packed show this week, but first, it's time to introduce a couple of friends and share some exciting news.
That's right. We're joined by MacStories Editor-in-Chief Federico Viticci and Managing Editor John Voorhees.
Hello. Hi. Thanks for having us.
Hey, it's great to be here, guys.
Of course, we have you here for a very special reason. Magic Rays of Light is officially becoming a part of the MacStories family of podcasts today.
Yeah, this has been quite some time in the making, and we approached Sigmund at WWDC. Devon was not at WWDC, maybe this year. We'll see. But we've been huge fans of you guys' work on Magic Rays for quite some time now. I feel like you have done such an excellent job going in depth on the very specific topic of Apple TV, Apple TV Plus, Apple Originals, just Apple entertainment in general. That's the kind of approach that we love at MacStories, just two people talking about something that they know well. It felt like a natural fit in terms of growing the MacStories catalog of shows. And so we started having these conversations over the past few months. And here we are now, Magic Rays of Light becoming a MacStories podcast. And you were kind enough to invite us over for this transition episode, which is not so much of a transition, I guess. We're not changing anything about the structure of the show. Existing episodes will carry over. Those who are already subscribed to Magic Rays should have been transitioned seamlessly as part of this MacStories change, and you should see nothing else in terms of the feed or the show. So John and I, we both felt that Magic Rays would be this sort of perfect addition to the MacStories family of podcasts. I'm so happy that we finally made it work.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us on the show today, both of you. It's a real pleasure to be here and talk to you about some shows today and some other things. And it's great to have you on MacStories as well, because you can really tell from listening to Magic Rays of Light, I've been a listener for quite a while, that your passion really shines through for all these topics. So thanks again for agreeing to come and join us on MacStories.
We've both been big fans for a long time, and now we're colleagues. The only change really is that we are now publishing on Wednesdays, which actually is the best intro for the week ahead for Apple TV, Apple Originals, and everything else. There will also be some Club MacStories benefits, including, I think, this week as well. What does Club MacStories entail for anyone that's unaware?
Yeah, the Club MacStories is something that Federico started in 2015, and I joined shortly after its inception with about issue 25 of our weekly newsletter called MacStories Weekly. We just passed 400 issues of MacStories Weekly, and we also do a monthly newsletter called the Monthly Log. So as a Club MacStories member, you get both of those things. And we have various tiers. You can learn more about all of this at club.macstories.net/plans. But we have a Discord community. We have special podcast episodes of our show, MacStories Unwind, that's ad-free and comes out early. Lots of different benefits for being a Club MacStories member. But this week in particular, on Friday, we are going to do a very special kind of media-focused issue of MacStories Weekly, just to celebrate Magic Rays of Light joining MacStories, because we'll have Devon and Sigmund involved in that. I don't want to spoil what we've got planned, but we'll have some nice surprises for club members there as well.
So if you haven't checked out Club MacStories before, be sure to give it a look. We'll link it in the show notes. We think it's well worth checking out, and you'll be seeing some familiar names there this week. And I will say on MacStories Unwind, if you're a fan of this show, I think you're going to enjoy that show as well. Federico, you and John give media recommendations every week. Not always TV and movie recommendations, but often they are. And there's also some really funny stories, and I love especially the cultural banter, where especially Federico asks about different weird things that we do here in the United States, and it's awesome to hear John explain them, and Federico, your perspective on them. It always cracks me up.
Yeah.
Thank you.
John explains America to teaching, yes.
So the only other change that will be happening for our listeners, at least, will be our contact email. If you want to reach out to us, we always welcome your feedback. We love to hear what you're thinking and what you're watching. So you can reach out to us at magic@macstories.net. That'll be our contact email going forward.
Federico and John will be back a little bit later on in this episode to recap For All Mankind and Monarch Legacy of Monsters, as well as answer a question which is related to our next subject. Of course, the moment we've been waiting for finally came. Apple Vision Pro has a release date and a pre-order date.
Well, I have to say, you've instilled in me a little bit of a competitive side, Sigmund. And so I have to gloat for just a moment that I was correct in my prediction that it would be earlier rather than later. I really took a swing with predicting it would be before the end of February. But here we are in January, and we're going to be able to pre-order Apple Vision Pro beginning this Friday, January 19th at 5 a.m. Pacific. And the device will actually be available on Friday, February 2nd at all U.S. Apple Store locations and in the U.S. Apple Store online. This is so soon, Sigmund. I did not imagine it was going to be this quick this year. Did you?
I had a bit of an inkling. I think your February prediction may have stemmed from a conversation we had before recording. Well played, well played. I'm just really, really excited for this. Let's talk about some of the details. I think one detail that we knew all the way back at WWDC was the price. Apple Vision Pro will start at $34.99 with 256 gigabytes of storage. Now, it's unclear at this juncture whether that means there will be additional storage tiers or if we're basing the starting app price on the additional lens options, which will be available $99 for readers and $149 for prescriptions, which will be courtesy of a partnership with Zeiss. You will need a US approved prescription signed off by an ophthalmologist, and that's because of regulatory laws, which I believe actually are different from state to state.
Yeah, eye care is one of those weird kind of mixed bags here in the United States. You can buy readers at the pharmacy, just over the counter, get as close to your prescription as you can to kind of get by that way. But if you really want exact prescription lenses for your eyes, you have to go through a doctor. And so I'm not surprised that Apple's requiring this, but I do understand that it's going to be a little bit tricky maybe for people planning to come over from Europe and other countries to pick up their Apple Vision Pro.
Yeah. Including myself. A couple of things that we know. You're going to need to have updated the Apple Store app ready for pre-order, and the process will include scanning your face with Face ID to hopefully get the best fit possible for Apple Vision Pro. A little tip, you can actually put in your prescription into the Health app in iOS ahead of time, which could be handy, although what I hear is that there will actually be surveys after you've made the pre-order that will go out asking for your prescription details.
Now, we did learn last June that Apple Vision Pro comes with a 2-hour battery life for regular use, but a new detail we learned this week is that it actually comes with an extended 2.5-hour playback for 2D video. That'll get you through a lot of film, Sigmund. Maybe not Killers of the Flower Moon necessarily, but if you're wanting to watch a longer film, you can always plug into the wall or an external battery pack as well. So those are the details we got alongside the pre-order dates. Again, that's this Friday morning if you want to pre-order an Apple Vision Pro. But just before we hit record, we also got some very interesting news on the entertainment front. A huge press release from Apple overviewing all kinds of details about things we're going to be able to watch and experience on Apple Vision Pro. Tell us a little bit about that, Sigmund.
I mean, I'm beaming at this one, Devon. Let's start with 150 3D movies at launch in the TV app. And I will just add to this from a possible 450 titles that have either had digital, physical, or theatrical 3D releases in the past. The upgrade path will be the same as it was when we moved from HD to 4K, meaning that titles you purchased in iTunes or the TV app will receive a upgrade free of charge. So any of those films that become eligible with 3D playback will just automatically become available for you. And what I think is also really cool about this is not just for purchases, it's for rentals as well, which I think is really, really important. And even more so, there'll be several streaming apps, including Disney Plus, who will offer 3D versions of their latest and most popular movies at launch, and will debut new 3D editions alongside or shortly following their standard 2D releases. This, I think, is huge, because I understand there are many people like myself that never got out of purchasing their films. And then there is another side of the equation where people really just want to subscribe to their services and be done. And you're going to be able to have access no matter what your choice of consumption is, which I think is really, really cool.
This really surprised me. I thought that companies like Disney, who, do put in the effort to make these 3D versions of their films, which comes at a cost, right, would maybe want to try to recoup some of that by making it exclusive to purchases and rentals. But the fact that they're including this in the Disney Plus app really is a value add to people who already subscribe to the service. If you're picking up a Vision Pro and you're a Disney Plus subscriber, this is going to be a ton of 3D content available to you. And if you're not a Disney Plus subscriber or to these other streaming services that are going to offer 3D content, this may be a good reason for you to try it out, looking for content to enjoy on your Apple Vision Pro. Now, of course, because you'll be watching these films and shows on your Apple Vision Pro, you'll get some added goodies. You can watch 2D or 3D movies with spatial audio and in an environment to make the experience even more immersive. Every time I think about the possibilities of being able to watch my favorite films on that 100-foot wide screen in an immersive environment, Sigmund, I just get so excited. It's just going to be amazing.
In the press release, whilst we mentioned a number of movies that we know are showing up in the 3D search in the TV app, there were a few that were included in this press release that threw me and had me very, very excited. First off, Avatar: The Way of Water, Dune, which I think's perfect, right ahead of Part 2, releasing in theaters in a couple of months. And then Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse and the Super Mario Brothers movie. I am blown away by this, and I can only imagine what Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is going to feel like. That's going to be an attack on the senses for sure. Now, last week we talked about a number of titles that we've seen pop in and out of the TV app across different regions when you type 3D in the search bar. Interestingly, not all of those titles are actually 4K. Some of them are HD and they're older films from the mid-2010s. And so I'm interested to see how that's going to work with titles that are maybe 4K. If you have the HD version that was imported through Movies Anywhere from a different storefront, whether or not you're still going to be able to get 3D playback in a lower resolution. Beyond 3D, we've got to talk about the streaming services that are going to be available on launch on Apple Vision Pro. They include Disney Plus, ESPN, MLB, PGA Tour, Max, Discovery Plus, Amazon Prime Video, Paramount Plus, Peacock, Pluto TV, Tubi, Fubo, Crunchyroll, Red Bull TV, IMAX, TikTok, and Mubi. Users can also watch popular online and streaming video using Safari and other browsers.
Now, of course, all of these streaming apps will be compatible with Apple's built-in environments for Apple Vision Pro. So if you're watching any of these streaming services, you'll be able to watch them in an immersive environment. But apps can also include their own environments, and we know one in particular that will be doing so from launch. That's Disney Plus. It will include 4 iconic detailed environments that you can stream Disney Plus in. Those include the Disney Plus Theater, inspired by the historic El Capitan Theater in Hollywood, the Scare Floor from Pixar's Monsters, Inc., Marvel's Avengers Tower overlooking downtown Manhattan, and the cockpit of Luke Skywalker's Landspeeder facing a binary sunset on the planet Tatooine from the Star Wars galaxy. We got a very brief glimpse of this in the Apple Vision Pro announcement at WWDC. This one looks so cool. To be able to watch Star Wars on Tatooine, I think it's just going to be amazing. And I think it's great that we're seeing at least one third-party developer already creating these immersive environments to add to the experience of Apple Vision Pro.
It's going to be interesting to see how experimental those environments become from third parties. And it's going to be interesting to see how experimental the apps become from third parties. Something that you and I have talked about in the past with regard to tvOS and the Apple TV is how kind of inconsistent the apps have become across streaming. Apple platforms are known more for consistency and simple UX. So I'm both excited and nervous. What do you think?
I think it'll be a little bit of a Wild West at first as developers kind of figure out what works. Of course, a lot of developers are actually making apps for Apple Vision Pro without even having touched the hardware and experienced their apps on the hardware. So I think it'll be a learning experience for them especially. I think eventually these apps are going to end up somewhere between iPad and tvOS apps in terms of density of information and interaction style and stuff like that. But I think we've seen on tvOS over time, even recently with the change to the Apple TV app to have a left sidebar, there's been some consistency, some agreement over time among developers of maybe what works best on different screen sizes. So I will be interested to see how that develops. I think we will eventually get some best practices though. And the apps that we've seen so far, I love seeing the different screenshots of different apps people working on for Vision Pro because it just looks incredible. And of course, the other side of the story is that Apple Vision Pro will be able to run iPad apps natively if the developers allow for it. And I really hope that developers do opt in to this option because I really think that's going to help boost the third-party story on Apple Vision Pro. There are so many apps that I love on my iPad that I know aren't in development for Apple Vision Pro currently that I really feel like I need on my main computer. And so I don't really be wearing the Apple Vision Pro but then holding my iPad trying to use an app that's not available on the Apple Vision Pro. Based on what Apple has said and even what Apple is doing with some of their own first-party apps, a lot of their apps will actually launch as the iPad versions, at least to start. So I think they've worked hard to make that compatibility work really well. And so I hope to see third-party developers engage in that as well because I think that'll be a big boost to it.
Just from a streaming perspective, VPN app makers, please do not let me down come February 2nd. Okay, we've talked about 3D, we've talked about streaming, but this is, I think, the piece of the puzzle that we have been waiting to be revealed, and it has finally. All new immersive entertainment experiences created with Apple Immersive Video, 180-degree 3D 8K recordings with spatial audio. We have an official name for the video format, Apple Immersive Video, but also we have some examples of what we can expect come launch day, and I'm super excited about this because there are a couple that are familiar and there are a couple announcements here that are completely brand new.
That's right. Let's start with one that we heard about at WWDC from people who got to experience Apple Vision Pro. That's Alicia Keys' Rehearsal Room from Apple TV. This offers a rare glimpse into the Grammy winner's creative process with this intimate rehearsal session featuring renditions of her hits No One, If I Ain't Got You, and You Don't Know My Name. You'll be able to be in the rehearsal space with her as she and her band are performing this. Look around, see them performing. From what I've heard, this is a really cool way to experience music and hopefully just a taste of what we can see from concerts on Apple Vision Pro in the future. Alongside that experience, users can also access these performances as a special EP exclusively on Apple Music when it debuts.
Very cool. We're also going to be able to go on an adventure, Devon. Adventure follows pioneering athletes as they take on awe-inspiring challenges in some of the world's most sensational locations. In the first episode, Highlining, viewers step into thin air with highliner Faith Dickey as she takes on her biggest challenge yet, a daring traverse 3,000 feet above Norway's breathtaking fjords. I've got a funny feeling this is a good pairing with Vertigo from Alfred Hitchcock in the TV app. When experiencing this, I will be sat down
Now, if heights aren't your thing, you can also check out Wildlife from Apple TV, which takes viewers up close and personal with some of the most charismatic creatures on the planet to uncover what makes them unique, featuring the experts who know them best. The first episode brings viewers into the world's largest rhinoceros sanctuary, where a former police captain has dedicated her life to rescuing, raising, and rewilding these gentle giants. I love a zoo, Sigmund. I love to go see the rhinos especially. I think they're beautiful creatures and ones that I would not want to get close to just because I also find them intimidating. So the ability to get up and close and personal with them in a safe environment in an immersive way, I think this is going to be awesome. And this fits in really well with a lot of what Apple TV Plus has been doing with Small Planet and stuff like that. This fits very well in with their strategy there.
Finally, in the press release, Prehistoric Planet Immersive from Apple TV Plus is coming to Apple Vision Pro. The award-winning Apple original docuseries from Jon Favreau and the producers of Planet Earth will return with an immersive film that transports viewers into the daily lives of dinosaurs and follows the struggles and triumphs of these majestic animals amid spectacular scenery. Prehistoric Planet Immersive whisks viewers along a rugged ocean coast where a pterosaur colony settles in for an afternoon nap, which proves to be anything but restful. I'm really, really excited about this. This is something I heard about a long time ago during the Prehistoric Planet premiere at BFI IMAX whilst talking to the showrunner. So happy to see this actually come to fruition. I'm also happy to hear that from an entertainment point of view, Apple Vision Pro will also be offering interactive narrative experiences that dynamically responds to a user's input. Encounter Dinosaurs is a free app created by Apple and executive produced by Jon Favreau, inspired by Prehistoric Planet, and will allow users to look back into a prehistoric time and interact with lifelike 3D dinosaurs in spatial audio as if they were bursting through their own physical space. This, I understand, is the demo that people got, culminating in a butterfly landing on one's finger, which, if you just think about the computational process to be able to render that and have it interact with a finger in real life, that's pretty mind-blowing.
Yeah, it really feels futuristic. And to hear people describe it, I imagine it's something you really just have to experience for yourself. Because from what I've heard, you really do have that kind of ghost physical sensation of the butterfly landing on your finger because it just feels so real. So an incredible lineup of immersive and interactive entertainment coming to Apple Vision Pro all on launch day, which is very, very exciting. Apple also revealed that Apple original series and films produced in Apple Immersive Video will stream alongside Apple's award-winning offerings of original series and films on Apple TV Plus. So this is just the first we're hearing about some incredible things coming from Apple to Apple Vision Pro, and no doubt we'll be hearing more in the future.
Indeed. Some guesses? Foundation, maybe?
Yes.
Maybe some Masters of the Air? Maybe some Monarch, Legacy of Monsters. Am I getting into trouble? I am so excited for this future. And the future, again, is not far away. Pre-orders start this Friday at 5 a.m. Pacific and available across the US. And not just that, if you are just wanting to experience Apple Vision Pro for the first time, you will be able to book a session and explore the world of spatial computing. A new era, Devon, and I think we're both ready for it.
Most definitely. We'll both be counting down the days to the big release of Apple Vision Pro on February 2nd. For now, though, let's talk about Apple original releases, because we got some big news this week about Girl State, which will premiere Friday, April 5th on Apple TV Plus, after making its Sundance debut this week. In the documentary, young female leaders from wildly different backgrounds in Missouri navigate an immersive experiment to build a government from the ground up. So if you saw Boy State a few years ago on Apple TV Plus, you'll kind of know what to expect. Of course, this is a totally different group of folks in a totally different environment, so who knows what kind of government they're going to come up with, but it's guaranteed to be entertaining when it comes to Apple TV Plus on April 5th.
We also got some news on the kids and family slate coming. January 26th sees Sargo Mini Friends Season 2, which we also saw a trailer for last week, alongside a trailer for The Dynasty, New England Patriots, which is coming February 16th.
Also February 16th, a film I'm very excited for about a character from the Peanuts world who I adore. Snoopy presents Welcome Home Franklin. We're going to get the origin story of Franklin, a film all about him. Absolutely can't wait to see it on February 16th. Finally, on March 29th, one I know that you're excited for, Sigmund, Fraggle Rock Back to the Rock returns for Season 2.
Oh yes, I cannot wait for this. Big Fraggle Rock fan from back in the day. Loved it when the reboot came over, along with all of the classic episodes that are available to Apple TV Plus subscribers as well. It's just so good to see our TVs back with all of this puppetry and all of the animatronics. A show that is weird, wacky, and quite special. Which I guess is how you could describe CES every year, the Consumer Electronics Show. Always full of weird, wacky, and special concepts and products that we expect to see later on in the year. One device at CES that really got my attention was the Belkin Stand Pro. And I just want to talk about this very quickly. This is the first to integrate with Apple's DocKit framework, which debuted at WWDC last year. We were all very excited about the idea of being able to attach your phone to something that automatically pairs and then follows you around the room, which is going to be great for a number of different scenarios. Of course, we're going to talk about the practical in a moment, but the first that came to my mind was Apple TV, SharePlay, and continuity camera, of course. Whilst it should work, our friend and Apple home enthusiast, Eric Wallander, mentioned continuity camera with Apple TV to Belkin on the show floor at CES, but didn't get a clear answer as to or if when continuity camera would be supported. Of course, we'll reach out and try and find out ourselves in the future, but tell us a little bit about some of the details on this.
Yeah, well, DocKit itself is very exciting. Just having something with such deep integration with the operating system where a motorized stand can follow you and keep you in frame as you're moving around. I think that's a very cool concept. Awesome that Apple built it and that it's so integrated with the Belkin Stand Pro. But they took it even a step further, I think, with the design of this product, including a rechargeable battery that lasts up to 5 hours. And so when you take it on the go, you can just throw it on a tripod stand. You don't have to worry about power. And you can film your great masterpiece film that you're working on, or if you're working on something for social media, or even just home videos out of the park with friends and family. You don't have to worry about power. You can just take it with you and it'll be ready to go. But when you do get home and plug it in, it also acts as a MagSafe charger when plugged into the wall with pass-through power. And so I could definitely see this being something that I actually use most of the time just as a MagSafe stand. And then when it's time to go out, I could just grab it and have 5 hours of battery life with me. So this is very cool. I'm excited to see this come to fruition after the announcement at WWDC, and I'm excited to see what people make with it. Now, moving from Las Vegas across the pond, Sigmund, there was some big news out of the British Film Institute this week, right?
There was. Jay Hunt has been named the next BFI chair. The director for Apple TV Plus in Europe has been a governor of the BFI since 2020 and joins the British Film Institute for 4 years beginning next month. She had this to say after having the honour bestowed upon her. The BFI plays such a vital role in supporting great British storytellers, and I'm delighted I'll be chairing the organisation at such an exciting and challenging time. I'm passionate about the quality and range of film and TV we produce in the UK, and look forward to championing it on the world stage. Hunt will continue on in her role at Apple with her commissions, including Slow Horses, Bad Sisters, and Tiny World. So, good news. That isn't going to necessarily affect Apple TV Plus, but I think another feather in the cap for the service going forward.
Certainly, and it just speaks to, again, how ingrained Apple are now in the TV and film industry, not only in the US, but across the world. They really are wanting to get involved and be contributors to the space, in addition to making Apple originals, which I think is awesome. Now, speaking of creating Apple originals, there are a ton in production right now, Sigmund. Let's talk about them, starting with an announcement from Apple and MLS of an 8-part docuseries currently in production from Box to Box Films, exploring the spectacular and unpredictable world of soccer in North America. Described as a panoramic documentary event, the series will offer both dedicated fans and new audiences a definitive, never-before-seen insider's view into the league, while spotlighting all of the biggest moments of the 2024 season. If this sounds like something you've heard of before, maybe in a different sport, you'll be familiar with Box to Box Films from Make or Break and also Drive to Survive, the F1 docuseries on Netflix. They know how to do this sort of thing. This is a great matchup. I think it's going to be a great addition to Apple's partnership with the MLS this year.
Sticking to football, Ted Lasso writers got together last week, according to Jason Sudeikis, ahead of the Golden Globes. The hints of something coming from the world of AFC Richmond, I think, keep coming, but I do want to note that Jason Sudeikis finally got rid of the moustache this weekend, so maybe he's sick of the questions. I guess we're just going to have to wait and see what happens.
Another world I'm excited to get back into is the world of Mythic Quest, with news that spin-off Mere Mortals has wrapped filming, according to Ashley Birch. Showrun by Birch, Katie McElhaney, and John Harris, the series explores the lives of employees, players, and fans who are impacted by Mythic Quest. I'm very excited for this one, kind of an anthology take on the world of Mythic Quest. Very excited for anything from the team behind Mythic Quest. I know we've got more Mythic Quest coming. We've also got this great spin-off, and I just can't wait to see it.
Another show that I am very much looking forward to, an Apple original series called Price Cahill, which has resumed production. The series stars Owen Wilson as an experienced professional golfer who is no longer at the top of his game. His life takes a turn when he becomes a mentor to a 17-year-old golf prodigy named Sanjay. This sounds amazing, and I'm very, very much looking forward to this. It sounds heartfelt as well. Something kind of less heartfelt is Slow Horses, at least when you think of Jackson Lamb. And that show will begin photography in February for season 5 in London, and I think for the second season in a row on location to colder climates.
Mayday, starring Ryan Reynolds and Kenneth Branagh, begins filming in February. The Apple original film follows Troy, a naval aviator who's rescued while on a mission over Soviet airspace. Unsure if his rescuer is an ally or a foe, Troy must rely on him as they journey across Russia seeking aid.
Finally, Vince Gilligan's new Apple original series begins shooting next week in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Of course, coming from the creator of Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, which I am still very, very upset that it didn't receive one Emmy during its entire run. Absolutely criminal stuff there. This upcoming show from Vince Gilligan has been compared to The Twilight Zone. The new series is said to be set in our world while putting a tweak on it, bending reality and focusing on people and exploring the human condition in an unexpected, surprising way. This is said to be thought-provoking but not a morality tale, with the series also expected to carry the signature Gilligan tone that infuses drama with humour. Rhea Seehorn, who has been a long-time collaborator with Gilligan, teased the upcoming show in the lead-up to the Emmys on the red carpet. This is why you watch these things. She said, Vince is very loyal and likes the family of people that he has worked with and prefers to hire the same people over and over, so I could see lots of reasons why he would want it to be Albuquerque, but I can tell you that it doesn't have anything to do with Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul. She went on to tease that the role is one she's never played before and is extremely unlike anything she'd ever done before, adding, I guess the only thing I'm allowed to say is that in his genius way, even when you're reading the scripts I've read free, every time you think you know what story or what genre this is, he takes a turn. He keeps taking a turn. It's amazing writing. And I cannot wait for this. This is something completely new. Very exciting.
In casting news, Natalie Portman and John Krasinski are set to star in upcoming Apple original film Fountain of Youth from Skydance Media. Directed by Guy Ritchie and written by James Vanderbilt, the film follows two estranged siblings who partner on a global heist to find the mythological Fountain of Youth. They must use their knowledge of history to follow clues on an epic adventure that will change their lives and possibly lead to immortality.
Finally, in casting, Rosie Perez, who portrayed Flora in Now and Then, has joined the cast of Apple original series before. The psychological thriller stars Billy Crystal and Judith Light in addition to Perez, and follows a child psychiatrist who, after recently losing his wife, encounters a troubled young boy who seems to have a haunting connection to his past. Possibly an awards contender. That's in the future, because wow, do we have a lot of Apple FYC award news this week.
My goodness, award season is in full swing, and Apple Originals are taking home the gold in several categories. Let's start with the Golden Globes. Lily Gladstone winning Best Performance by a Female Actor in a Motion Picture Drama for Killers of the Flower Moon, because of course she did. Excellent acceptance speech. Definitely look that up. Very inspiring. So happy to see her take home the win there.
Critics' Choice wins this week. Billy Crudup won Best Supporting Actor in a Drama Series, which I've got to say I'm really, really happy about. But wow, if you look at the competition that he was up against, that is quite the take. And also this week, we saw a Primetime Emmy win for Outstanding Actor in a Limited Series for Paul Walter Hauser in Blackbird. Of course, the Emmys this year are actually last September's Emmys, just delayed. So we'll get another Emmy Awards this September. Very, very cool to see Blackbird and Paul Walter Hauser finally get the plaudits that they truly deserve.
In addition to the Primetime Emmys, the Creative Emmy winners were also announced, with Apple taking home 11 awards across a number of titles, including Ted Lasso with Outstanding Guest Actor for Sam Richardson and Outstanding Original Music and Lyrics, Blackbird for Cinematography, 5 Days at Memorial for Visual Effects, several awards for Still, a Michael J. Fox movie, including Outstanding Documentary, Outstanding Music Composition, Picture Editing, and Directing, as well as some awards for Apple productions outside of the Apple Originals banner, including Outstanding Emerging Media Program for the For All Mankind Season 3 experience, Outstanding Commercial for the Greatest Accessibility ad, and an award for Outstanding Directing for a Variety Special to Hamish Hamilton and Sean Carter for the Apple Music Super Bowl halftime show starring Rihanna. And award season isn't over. Apple picked up 10 SAG Award nominations across several titles, including Killers of the Flower Moon, The Morning Show, and Ted Lasso, and one for Killers of the Flower Moon at the Directors Guild of America Award nominations. So congratulations to all the winners and nominees. A wonderful week for Apple for your consideration.
From award-winning storytellers to rewarding storytelling with two people that know all about stories, it's time for us to recap 2 incredible seasons of Apple Original Sci-Fi, namely Monarch, Legacy of Monsters, and For All Mankind. Federico and John will rejoin us with their thoughts, but first, following the thunderous battle between Godzilla and the Titans that leveled San Francisco and the shocking revelation that monsters are real, Monarch, Legacy of Monsters tracks 2 siblings following in their father's footsteps to uncover their family's connection to the secretive organization known as Monarch.
Monarch was there in San Francisco, taking pictures like they'd been waiting for it.
You think that your father was working for them?
The world is on fire.
These monsters and Monarch have taken everything from me.
If you want to save millions of lives, we can use some help.
Now, of course, this series takes place within the greater MonsterVerse, the Godzilla universe that we've seen in the films. So to start off, I thought we'd each share our history with the MonsterVerse, how we came going into this series. I personally had never seen anything Godzilla related before in my life. This really was my first entry into that world, and I think it's a great way to jump in for those who haven't seen it before. But I imagine I'm probably in the minority here, that most people have seen something Godzilla related in the past. John, do you have a history with this series?
I do, and I don't even know if this counts as the MonsterVerse or not, but growing up as a kid, I saw the old black and white movies of Godzilla and the Mothra and all the other creatures that would fight each other, Godzilla versus King Kong, all these things. And there was a certain amount of camp to them. A lot of them, I think they were mostly Japanese films that had been dubbed into English. They were one of those staples of early television. This was even before the cable TV days when I had a choice between like 5 or 6 channels, which really obviously dates me quite a bit. But yeah, that's kind of where I started. But I've also seen the more recent movies as well, the Godzilla movie and King Kong iterations that have been out recently. But I got to say that those movies to me were a little bit forgettable. I mean, I enjoyed them. I didn't dislike them really. On the other hand, though, they just didn't grab me because I think, and maybe we'll get into this when we talk about the TV show. I think the TV show does a much better job of character development than the movies that came before them did. The movies before them were more of a spectacle, but there's a lot more going on with the characters in this TV series than I think was developed in the movies themselves. Especially, I'm thinking of the Godzilla movie where he attacks San Francisco.
My first outing with Godzilla was actually in 1998 with the Roman Emmerich film that had the Jamiroquai Deeper Underground soundtrack and an incredible music video. Check it out if you haven't. And then I didn't really touch on Godzilla beyond the original Japanese film, which I didn't really understand its connotations at the time, but really it was a response to the atomic bomb, which I thought was interesting from a political point of view. And then it wasn't until the 2014 Godzilla film, which really focused on the people, that I got into it. But I feel exactly the same way about the recent Godzilla vs. Kong. I don't know what it is. There was a spectacle to it, and it felt like once a spectacle arrived, the impact was lessened each time. It was without any real plot or narrative to really back it up. This show, I think, finally does that. Monarch is very separate from those films and is more based in the conspiracy that I guess we see mirrored in real life when it comes to aliens and everything else going on. Maybe even at one point the Loch Ness Monster in Scotland.
Well, just to catch us all up, because it's been a couple of months since the series started and a lot did happen. Speaking of the plot of this series, I want to do a quick recap because it has been a minute since it started and a lot has happened. So if you're trying to avoid spoilers, this would be a great part to skip over. The story follows Kate Randa, granddaughter of Bill Randa, whom we already know from Kong Skull Island, where he's played by John Goodman. Thought it was really cool that they got him for a cameo in the very first episode of Monarch as well, to kind of replay that character and get us back into the world. Kate's father goes missing right after Godzilla's attack on San Francisco, as shown in 2014's Godzilla, and she searches for him in Tokyo, only to discover his secret second family, including a half-brother named Kentaro. They find Monarch files hidden in their dad's office that lead them to Lee Shaw, one of the founders of Monarch, and along with their friend May, they travel the world looking for their dad, avoiding Monarch's grasp, and learning more about the Titans who constantly seem intent on harming them. Now, all of this is intercut with flashbacks to the 1950s, showing the foundation of Monarch by Lee Shaw, Bill Randa, and his wife, Dr. Keiko Mura. And the group ends up discovering that the Titans are entering our world through portals from their own world below the Earth's surface. Kate, Lee, and May fall through one of these portals and end up stranded in a world between worlds where they discover Kate's grandmother Keiko, who was presumed dead in the 1950s. It's not really time travel necessarily, but time kind of works differently in this world between worlds, and so all this time has passed, but she's still down there. The group return to our world after Lee strands himself in order to help them escape, and they end up on Skull Island in a facility run by Apex Cybernetics, a company familiar to those who have seen Godzilla vs. Kong. So there's a lot of connections to the films here. It's really interesting the way they've situated it in the middle of what's been going on with the MonsterVerse films, but I think it was really cool the way they connected it all. But speaking of the series, I thought we could share just our favorite parts of the season, what we really enjoyed about it. John, what did you really enjoy about this season?
So as I mentioned before, the characterization, I think, is really, to me, the highlight of this series because, and I suppose that part of this may be that they were forced into doing that by the fact that it is a TV series and it's got to run for many more hours than a feature film. Mm-hmm. And so they do have the monsters and the special effects, which I think are done very well in this show. But they can't be doing that wall to wall for 10 full episodes. So they do have to really focus on the people and the story, which I think really works particularly well for this show. I think, though, in terms of the entire 10 episode series, it's the ending to me that I really enjoyed, because I think the part where it comes together when they fall into the portal and they or the rift and end up in the world between worlds and meet Keiko. Kate meets her grandmother, who is just around her own age, maybe a little bit older. It's a really touching part of the show, and it brings together a lot of the different threads that have developed throughout the series. I think the one part that I found a little confusing and maybe not developed quite as much as I had hoped is why it is that there are two separate families, one in Tokyo and one in San Francisco. Maybe I just kind of missed that and glossed over it, but I hope that they develop that in a little more depth if this gets renewed.
Yeah, that was a little bit confusing. They just kind of throw you in the middle of it, right? Where Kate just kind of walks into this apartment that she thinks belongs to her dad, and suddenly there's this family with all these photos with him. There's a little bit in the flashbacks of him, I think, meeting Kentaro's mother, but they could definitely go in depth with some more flashbacks in a future season for sure. I completely agree with you about the way this season really seemed so character driven. It didn't rely too much on the big surprises and scares and things like that. There was a lot of that. There was a lot of Titan activity. But really what drew me in and kept me watching was the relationships and the characters themselves. Particularly, I loved the portrayal of Lee Shaw, who was played by Kurt and Wyatt Russell, a father-son duo playing the same character at different points in his life. And I thought they did a great job of really showing this person who, over these many years, kind of becomes jaded. He starts off so earnest and really wanting to, get to the bottom of what's happening with these Titans and really help make the world a better place. And then by the time he gets to Kurt Russell's portrayal, he's washed up, he's been forced to the side and left out of the action for so long, but then you kind of see that spark come back into his eye as he jumps back in, and he really does try to get involved with what's happening with these Titans. Wyatt Russell is someone who I enjoy as a performer, familiar with him from some of his work in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I think he's just a really compelling actor, and he does a great job with this role. But it's also just a great story to see these two guys, father and son, getting to work together for the first time and take on this character together in a really collaborative approach. I thought that was very cool.
I have to say, my highlight for this season is very much echoing what both of you are saying. The character development, again, we were talking about the films. This series had what I felt like those films had always lacked beyond the 2014 Godzilla film, which Monarch really follows on from. Even though the series finale episode is called Beyond Logic, I did think, for the most part, it was quite a logical ending. And what a packed episode it was. I mean, not only did we get a proper kaiju fight, we got multi-generational family reunion, a 2-year time jump, and all of the main characters no longer being associated with Monarch, which I thought really kind of laid the groundwork nicely for really whatever direction the series wants to go in. If there is a second season, where would everyone like to go with this? Because the thing for me that I really enjoyed about this series was I thought going in, this was the Godzilla show, but it really was the MonsterVerse show.
Yeah, it's a lot bigger than just Godzilla. What I was excited about going into the series, and they really delivered on, was explaining the underworld of, what's happening on the surface as these titans are fighting each other, and diving into, I think, especially the history of Monarch, maybe not so much the modern day Monarch, which I was honestly a little bit disappointed by the way they've become so fear-based and avoiding the titans rather than really trying to understand them. But the things that we learn from the flashbacks, I think, were really cool. And I'd like to learn more about the world of the titans, where they come from, hopefully see some kind of eventually resolution to this conflict between the two worlds. That might be the end of the MonsterVerse series, so maybe they don't want to quite go that direction with Monarch. But I would like to see them, again, just dive even more into the explanation about what's going on underneath the surface of the Earth and where these titans are coming from. I also want to know what happens to Lee, because I think we're going to see more of Kurt Russell in the future of the series. I don't think we're done with him.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. I think they've set it up really nicely for a continuation, because really I would expect that a second season would pick up where the last episode finished, with Apex and explaining what's going on Skull Island, but also then flashing back to the 2-year span and what was going on Earth while everybody else was in this Middleverse, and what's happening there. So I think that there's more story to tell there. There's probably more that can be done to flash back even further to explain what is Apex and where did they come from and what's the relationship with Monarch and what became of Monarch. I think there's a lot there that could be explored as well.
Yeah, I agree with you. I want to see more Apex, because I know that was significant to people who have seen the films. I could tell that it was something that was important and that I needed to know more about, but obviously not seeing the films, I don't know a lot about them, so I hope they dive more into that organization as well. Is there anything in particular you're looking forward to in Season 2, Sigmund?
Honestly, more of the same, especially when it comes to the flashbacks. I think my highlights from this show were the 50s era flashbacks, and that might just be because I was gearing up towards Godzilla -1, which is something completely separate from Toho Studios.
Well, that makes me think we might be setting up for like a Godzilla multiverse at some point, Sigmund. We got to do a crossover between these, right?
I hope so. As far as the season 2 goes, Chris Black, the showrunner of the show, said just this week, "We do not have a season 2 order. This show has done very well, so we're optimistic and excited. We feel we have more story to tell." So I think we all agree on that. And with that, season 1 of Monarch, Legacy of Monsters, is now streaming in its entirety on Apple TV+. I've got a funny feeling people are going to be replaying the very last, probably 10-15 minutes of that final episode again and again and again. From a Legacy of Monsters to a continuing alternative history in space, an accident on Mars strains relationships, whilst a discovery sends teams across Earth and Mars scrambling for answers, with unlikely partnerships formed. This is For All Mankind, Season 4.
This job on Mars, they're looking for guys just like us.
This asteroid is going to secure the future for Earth.
CIA, North Koreans, KGB, they're all wanting a piece of this pie. Let's take the most valuable known object in our solar system.
How much are you willing to lose?
I'm not going to be the guy that brought back the Cold War.
Tell him to shut it down.
So, a 4th season of For All Mankind. And something that I think is really cool about this particular IP, as opposed to Monarch Legacy of Monsters, is this is an IP that has really been born out of Apple Originals from its debut in 2019. I have been absolutely captivated by this series from the very get-go. Now, Federico, Devon and I gave a little bit of homework. Mm-hmm. I don't know, did you get through all 10 episodes?
I couldn't get through all the 10 episodes. I'm stuck at the end of episode 6 because I really tried hard, but I fell asleep last night at 3:30 a.m. watching the final part of episode 6, Leningrad. So yeah, that's where I was able to get through. I wasn't able to finish, so please don't spoil the ending for me. Please, I'm begging you, because I absolutely love this show.
What has your experience been with For All Mankind so far? Because is it what you expected, and has the series changed over the years?
Yeah, so it's much better than I was expecting. So as soon as I heard about like this show 4 years ago, and that Apple was working on this and what the premise was going to be, I was immediately captivated, because this idea of what if you take the arc of human history, you change a single particular event and see how the timeline evolves from there, that is very intriguing. That premise, that concept does something to my brain that immediately grabs my attention. I was like, yes, I'm in. I'm on board with this idea. And so the season 1 and the sort of the idea of like the Russians got to the moon first. How does history change after that? Like I was immediately obsessed. Season 2 and season 3, I really liked, especially season 3 with the final drama with the terrorist attack. Obviously, it's not that I liked the terrorist attack, but I really liked how the whole arc was developed, and the drama and the chaos and the surprise of the final shot at the end with Margot Madison now in Russia instead of the United States. Like that entire storyline, I think, was really, really well developed. And over the years, I think there's a couple of things that I wanna call out for in terms of my relationship with For All Mankind. The first one is the shots of space exploration, like this imaginary future, or I guess not future, but like alternative past timeline spaceships, and like the technology that they sometimes invented and other times sort of took inspirations from actual projects from previous NASA missions and then tweaked for the sake of the show. Like all that, like that entire part of For All Mankind is really fascinating to me. But also the evolution of the characters. I know that it's on the internet, a lot of folks make fun of the fact that Ed Baldwin will never die, and we'll have season 7 of For All Mankind, and Ed will be like a disembodied head in a jar. I don't think that's gonna happen. But I don't know. I've always liked Ed as a character because he plays a flawed character and a flawed human being, and as we're seeing in season 4, and the fact that Ed doesn't want to go back to Earth, even though there's his nephew literally waiting for him. He's a flawed human being and a flawed character and a very problematic figure, and that's what makes him fascinating. Back in season 2, I really liked Gordo and Tracy, and I was really a Gordon and Tracy stan myself. I was disappointed by their death, even though that moment was very touching and beautiful. And I absolutely hated Danny in season 3 with all my heart, with a passion. So yeah, that's and obviously with season 4, as I mentioned, I'm still not done with the finale. We just aired yesterday for me here in Italy. It comes out on Friday, very early Friday morning, basically the nights between Thursday and Friday. And I am really, really liking this season and all the drama on Mars and Happy Valley. So that's sort of my relationship with For All Mankind.
That's a great recap, really, of where we are, not just in terms of the science behind the space exploration, but also how melodramatic the series got. Season 4, I feel, resets in a lot of ways.
Yes.
And what I loved about this also is you do finally get a change in Ed Baldwin midway through the season, which I think shows growth because really his character is born out of an era where men were men and everything else. And finally we're seeing some growth from him, even though we might have seen moments. I feel like this is the season where we really see it. But what I think is really interesting about this season is also the dynamics at play with regard to not just the competition between nation states, but now what is coming, the competition between planets. We may be getting into spoiler territory, so fingers and ears, Federico.
Okay, all right.
Before we get into the finale, let's recap everything that happened this season.
Wow, there is so much going on this season. The central conflict, which I did not picture going into the season, was about an asteroid rich with precious metals that NASA and Star City and all the different space organizations want. Of course, Happy Valley has grown and expanded with the countries of the world investing more and more resources into it and hoping to get some kind of return on their investment out of it. And that's where really the central conflict of the season comes from. It all centers around this asteroid, which is not really what I was expecting, but it's rich in precious metals. There's a lot of money in this asteroid. And so the M7 countries decide they want to capture this asteroid and harvest its materials. So then the question becomes how they do that and where they do that. There's a contingent that wants to do it on Mars and continue to develop in the Happy Valley colony. And there's a contingent that wants to bring it to Earth and mine it from there because it'll be cheaper and they won't have to invest in Happy Valley anymore. Ed Baldwin ends up, of course, on the Mars side. He has spent the entirety between seasons 3 and 4 on Mars. He has not gone back to Earth. I think he just considers himself a Martian now. And so he actually teams up with Dev in an unlikely pairing to basically steal this asteroid. There is some unrest among the Helios workers on the base. They're unhappy with their living conditions and their pay. And so Dev and Ed kind of use that displeasure as a starting off point to help them steal this asteroid and basically tell them that life's going to get better for them if they do so. And so you've got Daniel Poole, who's in charge of Happy Valley, and the official mission to capture the asteroid and send it to Earth. And then you've got Ed and his rogue team, who do end up ultimately stealing the asteroid, getting it into Mars orbit, so that the M7 nations will have to continue to invest in Happy Valley and Ed won't have to go back to Earth. Meanwhile, Margot, of course, is hiding out in Russia, trying to get her foot back in the door into the space program. The government in Russia is overthrown, taken over by new leadership who do bring her in and actually end up sending her back to the United States to help with the capture of this asteroid. And while she's there, she ends up flipping teams and helping kind of sway the tide towards the asteroid going to Mars. And as a result, she loses her protection from Russia and is arrested by the FBI. I think that kind of brings us to the finale. Of course, there's a lot more going on. It's a great season with lots of interpersonal stories, but that's kind of just an overall very sky-high view of what took place this season on For All Mankind.
I think beyond the biggest heist plot in TV history, what I really loved about this season was how we got beyond the conflicts between nation states and into the conflict between planets now, which I think really bodes well for the future. The finale ends in a way in which made my heart sink for a good 5 minutes, and I was actually genuinely quite angry. So well done with the little plot twist right at the end. But where I really wanted to focus this season is on Ren Schmidt, who plays Margot. This performance over all of the seasons that we've had so far, I think has really been the standout for All Mankind, and going into what is almost certain as a season 5. A really complex character is Margot, amongst many other complex characters.
Yeah, I would say one of the strengths of this show is actually the time jumps and the way that we spend so much time with these characters over such a big portion of their lives. And we really get to know them, the good and the bad. And I think among all the characters on the show, Margot's the one that we really see the highs and the lows the most. She's just someone who is very, maybe not even divisive, but she just causes ambivalence because you want to see her win, but then you see some of the decisions that she makes and where she ends up. And it really is just a harrowing journey to watch. She starts off as a NASA loyalist who basically lives in her office, which I thought was a great introduction to her character. And during the first season, she has to face the atrocities committed by her mentor, Werner von Braun, which was a really interesting historical tie-in, but I think really gives a good kind of basis to understand who she is and her history. Throughout the second and third season, she ends up sharing information with a Russian engineer, Sergei Nikolov, and is forced to betray her country in order to save his life. That scene in the hotel room when she realizes the choice that she has to make to save the man she loves or basically commit treason and give very, very confidential information over to another space program. That was a scene that still sticks with me to this day. At the end of season 3, we saw she has to defect to Russia when her treason is discovered, and she spends the intervening years and most of season 4 trying to navigate Soviet life while also trying to get back into the space game. And so she brought a really interesting element this season. Everyone thought she died in the attack on Johnson Space Center. And so for all these years between seasons 3 and 4, she's lived in obscurity, kind of being forced out of the space program in Russia that she was promised to be a part of, but also having no involvement with the U.S. space program, who thought she died basically a hero. And so throughout this season, she has to come back to the forefront. In order to help with the Mars mission, she has to reveal to the world that she is in fact alive and deal with the fallout of that, especially in her relationship with Aleda, which I love to see play out over the season. What I ultimately love about Margot is that her loyalty lies not with any country or program, but with space exploration itself. She risks and loses everything for the sake of scientific progress. I think that is admirable, even if you don't necessarily agree with all of the decisions that she makes and, you know, some of the impacts that she leaves in her wake. She is someone who truly does love space and love progress and really does want to help improve the world for other people. And those good intentions take her down some very interesting roads. But I think at the end of the day, and I do believe we're going to see more of her hopefully in season 5, she's someone that I do hope does get to continue on because I think she's such a powerful force. And I want to see her continue in the space program in some way, but I guess we're just going to have to wait and see what happens with her.
The first 4 seasons of For All Mankind are now streaming on Apple TV+. Before we say goodbye to Federico and John, with it not being too long before we have Apple Vision Pro on our heads, very quickly, you mentioned on a previous conversation about really looking forward to Titanic and the physical release of that. Titanic is one of the 3D titles that is semi-confirmed in the TV app right now.
Oh my god,
so,
really?
Yeah.
Wow, I can finally sync with Leonardo DiCaprio. We can sync together now. Finally.
But beyond 3D, obviously there's been rumours about the immersive spatial video experiences in the works, most likely for the IP that we've just talked about and recapped on this episode. What are your hopes for the future, and what would you like to see first, do you think?
My answer is a pretty easy one. I knew immediately what to answer. Concerts. I really hope we get some kind of immersive sort of spatial experience in terms of like concerts from some of my favorite artists. You know, I would imagine that like a 3D immersive Taylor Swift experience would be incredible, especially when it's become so hard to buy tickets for some of these mega stars. Like, I'm thinking of Taylor Swift or Beyonce, for example. It's impossible to get tickets. Or Blink-182, exactly. Sometimes they come to your country, like Blink-182, they're playing in Italy in a few months, but it's impossible to get tickets for a variety of reasons. Also because I was able to to test a tiny glimpse of what it would feel like when I tried the Vision Pro at WWDC 23 in June. And there was this brief demo of like 2 minutes where you are sitting in this rehearsal room with Alicia Keys playing on piano and some of her band members sort of jamming along with her. And it was incredible. Like, you can turn your head, there's Alicia Keys playing and singing. You turn your head to the other side, there's the guy playing the guitar or the bass, and there's the drummer right behind you. It's incredible, that sense of presence and immersive audio and video together. So I really hope that Apple either cuts some deals with specific artists and they are able to release immersive music content on Apple TV Plus for live performances. Imagine sitting right there in the audience, right? That would be my pitch.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, Federico. And, Apple owns a couple of studios now, too. They've got one in Nashville, I know, where they do some of the recordings for some of the live things they have on Apple Music. So it's not very far-fetched to think that they might actually use those facilities to do the immersive video. I really would love to see, I think it's kind of the shows that I enjoy, but others in my family don't, which are things like Monarch, which we talked about, because my wife's not so into that. And it would be okay if I just watched that on my own in the Vision Pro. So that kind of big spectacle type of show, I think, is going to be perfect for the Vision Pro. But I'd also like to see some of the documentaries that Apple has done on TV Plus come to the Vision Pro too, because I think that would add a new dimension to feeling like you're actually there and witnessing some of the animals. And, they have the dinosaur video that they did and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what would also be cool? And this is maybe, it's going to sound a little strange. I would love to have immersive video support for extras. Specifically, I would love an immersive version of the making of a movie. Like, I want to be virtually on
the set. Yeah,
on the set with the director and the camera crew and the actors. Like, not even necessarily the movie. I understand why, directors might still want to release standard 2D movies instead of 360-degree content. I understand. But being virtually on the set would be really, really nice.
Yeah, one thing that has kind of been missing so far from the Apple TV story has been the background information. We get a minute or two here or there of background footage. But if you think about it, when DVDs were first announced, we had picture-in-picture where you could really see how a scene was crafted, that kind of thing. I think that is what I would love to see come, especially whilst we wait for the spatial video productions maybe to ramp up. Something like that, I think, is going to be well worthy of an Apple Vision Pro purchase for creatives and film lovers.
Well, lots of great ideas for stuff we'd like to see come to Apple Vision Pro. I want to thank Federico and John for coming on for this very special episode of Magic Rays of Light. It's been a pleasure talking with you guys, and we look forward to working with you going forward.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having us, and thank you for joining MacStories. It's going to be a fun ride.
Well, thanks one more time to Federico and John for their time on Magic Rays of Light this week. Now let's get to this week's Apple TV releases. Of course, we'd be remiss if we didn't shout out that last weekend Killers of the Flower Moon became available to stream on Apple TV Plus in its entirety. If you're waiting for its streaming release, now is your time to experience what I continue to maintain is the best movie of 2023. Well worth watching, and if you're an Apple TV Plus subscriber and you haven't seen it, highly recommend checking it out. Today sees a new episode of Criminal Record, a series that keeps me on the edge of my seat every week. I was not anticipating being as into this one as I am, Sigmund, but I'm so into it, and I think you are too.
I have, and whilst I've seen all 8 episodes, as I mentioned in my review last week, it's a show that I am going to watch week in, week out. This was, again, the first series since Hijack that I had to binge in one go. There's definitely a payoff here. And I think the questions that are asked throughout each week's episode that stick with you like a ghoul, well worth the ride. Now, that's it when it comes to releases for Apple TV Plus this week. But we do have a ton of extras, beginning with a free book in Apple Books.
Well, of course, this week was Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and in honor of the holiday, Apple released The Essential Martin Luther King Jr., a selection of his writings for free in the Apple Books app. We recommend everyone download that, give it a read, and check out in the Apple TV app a special row dedicated to films and series based on his legacy.
Also in the extras this week is the Masters of the Air opening title sequence, which has been premiered on YouTube. This is quite special. Normally, I say skip watching anything ahead of the premiere, but this time, the visuals mixed in with Blake Neely's score, which I think is going to take this series to another level. They're so incredible. You need to just click that link and check it out from the show notes. Really, really special stuff. Alongside the opening title sequence for Masters of the Air, we also saw this week a featurette of Robbie Robertson's music for Killers of the Flower Moon, which very, very cool. Check it out if you haven't already. But beyond that, we also have, in terms of extras, some experiences happening for people in London. I feel bad asking you to tell us about it, but I'm going to.
Hey,
what's happening for lucky folks in London, Devon?
Well, I'm very jealous about these two events. I would love to attend them myself, but unfortunately, I'm a little far from London right now. Tomorrow at Apple Covent Garden, there's a talk entitled Kickstart Your Healthiest Year with Apple Fitness Plus, featuring several trainers from Apple Fitness Plus. It's a great way to meet them in person and learn a little bit about getting your fitness going this year. Then this weekend in London is the Argyle Experience, a pop-up experience where visitors can discover the world of Argyle. This is a very cool little maybe sneak preview of what you can expect from the film, just a way to kind of get excited for it and start to immerse yourself in the world. If you're in London this week, be sure to check out these two awesome events. We'll link them both in the show notes.
Unfortunately, I will not be in London this weekend for either of these, which I'm absolutely gutted about, because if I were, I'd be journaling them in the Apple Journal app, which I'll be honest, I haven't got completely into because there's one thing that's missing, and that is I'm not able to journal my movies and TV show viewings. Devon, I think it's time for us to unveil something you've been working on, a shortcut that's going to allow for me to be able to do that, and not just for me, but for everyone else.
Yeah, I've been working on a shortcut. It's called Watch History Journal. I made it for myself, of course, shared it with you, Sigmund, but I also want to share it with the world, with our listeners, and so I'll link it in the show notes. And what this does is it fills a hole in Apple's journaling suggestions. When Apple released their journal app, they also released an API for other journal apps to take suggestions from your activity that you do on your devices and allow you to use those as prompts for journaling. And those include the music that you listen to, the podcasts that you listen to, the workouts that you do, the places you go, all kinds of different prompts to just help you start reflecting on your life and even just record those memories for later. I'm really into these. I love using Apple's journaling suggestions. I actually use them in Everlog, not the journal app itself, but you can use them in any journaling app that integrates with the suggestions. But I wanted a way to record my TV and film history as well and reflect on the things that I watch and, kind of think those things through as I'm journaling. And so I was kind of stuck. I didn't really know how to go about this because, again, it's not something offered by Apple. I was hoping that they would maybe come out in the iOS 17.3 beta, maybe come out with some TV-based suggestions, but so far we haven't seen those, and so I decided to whip something up myself. And so this shortcut is based on your tracked watch history. So if you're using any tracked client, I use SQL, but you can use TV Forecast or any other app that works with tracked. You log your TV and movie viewing history throughout the day, and then when you're ready to sit down and journal at night, or you can set it up as a personal automation in the evening, you run this shortcut, it grabs your tracked history for the day, and it creates these journal entry images that summarize what you've watched for the day. And what I tried to do was make them look as much like Apple's journaling suggestions as possible, so it would all kind of blend in well. I've been using this for a couple of weeks now. You've been testing it for about a week. And basically, it's just a way to quickly summarize the films and shows that you watched during the day, give you an opportunity to reflect on them if there was anything that maybe struck you about them or something that you just wanted to write down, or if you just want a history of what you've watched, it's also helpful in that sense. And so it does all the work for you as far as making the images look right and collecting what you watch. If you watch multiple episodes, it'll note that as well. So you can kind of remember your binge of The Office or whatever it was. But yeah, that's Watch History Journal. It was a lot of fun to put together. It's the most ambitious shortcut I've ever worked on. First time I've ever really worked with an API and kind of trying to pull information from a web service in that sense. And so it's been a lot of fun to put together. And if you're the type of person who likes to journal the things that you're watching, reading, listening to, I hope that this is something that will kind of fill that hole for you, at least until Apple comes out with TV-based journaling suggestions, probably in iOS 17.4.
Well, as luck would have it. No, I'm kidding. How do we get our hands on this, Devon? And what does it take to set it up?
I'll leave a link in the show notes. If you're not familiar with the Shortcuts app, you can follow the link and install the shortcut that way. And the first time you run it, it will ask you for 3 things. First of all, your journal app of choice. It currently supports Apple's journal app, Everlog, and Day One. If you use a different app, you can just leave that one blank and it'll just save the images to your camera roll to use wherever you want to. It's also what it does with the journal app as well, because the journal app doesn't support shortcuts, but it will help you get started there anyway. It'll ask for your tracked username so it can pull your profile, your watch history, and then it will ask for a tracked API key. So you do have to sign up for the tracked API in order to use the shortcut. I will leave a link in the show notes where you can sign up for that as well. It's very simple to sign up. You just copy the code, and then when you run the shortcut, you paste it in. And that's a one-time thing that you have to do. And after that, it'll just run as often as you like it. Or again, you could set it up as a personal automation, which is what I've done, so that every day I just automatically have my watch history saved into my journaling app.
Fantastic. Well, you can check that out in the show notes. There'll be a little bit of a write-up also in the MacStories weekly newsletter this week, alongside a few extras from Devon and myself contributing towards the fantastic work that the rest of the MacStories team do week in, week out. One final question. It's a question that you're familiar with, but for those that aren't, we end every week with our Up Next picks from the TV app. Not necessarily an Apple original, but something out there in the world of streaming. And no doubt something that you will be journaling. I will say I'm interested to see that journal entry from your Beau is Afraid watch. But what have you got for us this week?
This week, my next pick is Self-Reliance. It's a film on Hulu and Disney Plus from Jake Johnson, who you might know from New Girl. He wrote, directed, and starred in the film. It also stars Andy Samberg and Anna Kendrick. It's a hilarious comedy about a guy who gets recruited into a game on the dark web where hunters are trying to harm him, but they can't touch him as long as he's in the presence of another person. And so he uses this as motivation to spend more time with other people, and you get to see the impact that this need that he has on his family and his friends and his other relationships. It's a hilarious film, made me laugh a lot. Jake Johnson's sense of humor really just speaks to me, and there's some great cameos in there as well. So that's my pick for this week. I also wanted to highlight that The Marvels, one of my top films of 2023, is now available for purchase in the TV app. And of course, there's a 3D version incoming as well. So if you go ahead and purchase that, you'll be ready when the 3D version drops. That is my Up Next pick for this week, Sigmund. What have you got for us?
Well, I'm glad you said you had 2 picks. Self-Reliance, I absolutely loved it, by the way. I checked it out last night. And definitely my type of comedy, some dark humour mixed in with some adventure. This week, I've got a few picks. My first pick is actually an Apple Music pick. It's the soundtrack for Dave, which is a series on Disney+, and it's called Penith. That's Penith, a joke from the repertoire of Lil Dicky, whose friend Gator also actually makes an appearance in Self-Reliance. So there's a little tie-in there. But this is a soundtrack that I've been waiting a long, long time for. Of course, season 3 of Dave came out last summer, starred Brad Pitt, Rachel McAdams. There's a song called Mr. McAdams about him wanting to be the Mr. McAdams to Rachel McAdams. In terms of TV now, True Detective Night Country, which is airing right now on Max and Sky Atlantic, made its debut this past weekend, and it stars Jodie Foster as Liz Danvers, who alongside Evangeline Navarro are in law enforcement in the fictional mining town of Ennis, Alaska, and they're brought together while investigating the men who disappeared from a local Arctic research station. The first episode had me completely, totally, utterly gripped. I've loved all of the seasons of True Detective up until now. I know some people kind of fell off after, I think, the third season. This is really the show coming back to its prime. And Jodie Foster is going through some renaissance right now. So highly, highly recommend True Detective Night Country. Also on Max, but, you know, I like to purchase my TV shows and films. Now that Succession is over, all seasons of Succession are currently on sale for $14.99 each. So if you're a completionist and you've been waiting, now's the time to get in there. And I'm hoping this is one that, Devon, you're finally going to end up watching.
Well, it's one that's hard to avoid with all the awards buzz and recommendations, so it's one that is definitely on my list to check out.
So that is the end of this episode of Magic Rays of Light, the first as part of the MacStories family of podcasts. I cannot say enough how fortunate we are to have the listeners we have and to have the community that we do. And this week, hearing from all of you the congratulations on this next step in the show, joining such a reputable publication in the world of Apple, has really been quite a humbling experience. So thank you to everyone. Some listeners we didn't even know were listening initially. So it's been a really, really special moment. And yeah, I'm a little bit stumped, Devon.
I felt myself at a loss for words this week as well. It's been an incredible week, and we are so grateful to everyone who's reached out to give us their well wishes and support us as we take this next step in the show's journey. It's been an awesome time, and there are great things ahead. Thank you so much to everyone who's listening, whether you've been with us since the beginning, whether you're starting with us just this week. We appreciate it so much, you spending time with us each and every week as we explore the world of Apple TV. Now, of course, we'd love to hear from you. If you have feedback, you can follow us on Apple Podcasts, leave us a rating and review there, or you can contact us on social media via the links in the show notes, or you can email the show or send us an iMessage to our new contact email address, magic@macstories.net. One more time, that's magic@macstories.net.
We'll be back next Wednesday to talk Masters of the Air and our Apple Vision Pro pre-order experiences. So until then, stay safe, watch some Apple TV, play some Apple Arcade, and have a great week ahead.